So this is something that I've been thinking on for the past 7 months. I shared this up on Facebook about a month ago, and I figured that it's probably not a bad idea to do a video of it either. For anyone who knows me, you know that I'm an immigrant. I came to the United States when I was 8 years old. My father had gotten a job in New Jersey, and he came over on the HB1 visa, or H1B visa. In the house next door, there was a boy about my age, and we began playing, even though at the time I spoke no English. But youth, as always, finds a way, and we became friends. And through his friendship and through Sesame Street and the Electric Company on PBS, I slowly learned English. We stayed in New Jersey for about a year or so before my father got a new job, this time in Indiana, so we picked up and moved. Indiana was absolutely an educational experience. I'd been in public school in New Jersey, and when we moved to Indiana, I started in public school there as well. This lasted less than a week. The first day of class, we were asked what we had done over summer vacation. And I, being from a family that travels a lot, stated matter-of-factly that we had been to Paris. One of the other students asked why anyone would want to go to Paris, Kentucky, and I, being naive, informed them that no, we went to Paris, France. At this point, my teacher in the public school system in Indiana accused me of lying because, quote, no one goes there. So I went home and I told my parents what the teacher had said, and the next week I was in a private school. Looking back at this today, I'm really not surprised that Indiana ranks in the bottom half of states for education, 33rd overall out of 50. We were a very liberal Swedish family, and we had a wide variety of friends. And one of the friends that we had as a family was a wonderful African-American colleague that my father had and his family. We'd invited them over to dinner. Now, we lived in a gated community, and that's sort of important to understand because they were running late, and we assumed that they were running late for whatever reason. We were in Evansville, Indiana. So my family was all sitting in the kitchen, and we had an intercom system that went from the gate to our house. And the intercom went off, and the gate guard called us up. And I will never, ever forget this conversation. And nor the accent or tone that it was delivered in. And I'm going to say every word in this conversation because it's very important to the understanding of the entire story. And I'm going to apologize in advance for saying every word in this conversation. So the gate guard gets on the intercom and says, "Dr. Lessem, is it true that these niggas are coming to visit you?" And I think that my father stared at the intercom for a number of heartbeats before he responded that yes, they were, and they are my colleagues from work, and please let them through. This was around the end of the year, and around prom time, because we lived in a gated community and knew all the other kids in the community, one of our neighbor's daughters had lent one of her purses to one of her classmates. Turns out that her classmate was African American. So when her mother found out, her mother then burned the purse and washed her mouth out with soap. My parents' comments when they heard about it was that the punishment was just wrong. Again, very typically Scandinavian response to that. And a few weeks later, in a gated community, mind you, where you had to get through security to get in, a cross was burned on our lawn. My father looked for a new job the very next day. And shortly thereafter, we moved to California. In California, my father's new company sponsored us for our green cards, and we took the opportunity and we got them. I finished elementary school and I started middle school in California, and they were pretty good years, and I remember them very fondly. We got our first computer in California. It was an Apple IIcx. It was amazing, and I knew that it would be more productive in the long run than the typewriter that we were using before that. We lived through the Great Quake of '89, and California we had some amazing friends and amazing exchange students while living there, and it was great. Eventually my father got a new job and we moved again, and this time we moved to Belgium for a year. It lasted a year, and since it's not really the point here, I'm going to really gloss it over. But we moved back to the United States, and this time we moved back to Pennsylvania again because my father got a job there. So in Pennsylvania, I finished middle school and high school, enjoyed my time there, and also enjoyed going home to Sweden every summer. After the summer of my senior year, I went home and began my military service. And again, it's not really relevant to the story here, aside from the fact that I eventually resigned my commission, which becomes important a little bit later. In 2009, after Obama had been elected president, I decided to become an American citizen. And this was despite having seen the racism of America up close, because I saw the potential that this country had. I knew from both my social studies, also known as civics, classes in high school, and my college degree in political science and the law degree that I have, that the United States has some issues. But every country does. However, the potential in this country was always here. And I knew that I wanted to become a citizen here because I wanted to be able to live my own American dream. And as a result of that, I resigned my commission in the Swedish Navy, because you can't swear fealty to foreign potentate and be an American citizen. I did not expect the racism that I had seen in Indiana to become the norm in the country. But it began to come out of the woodwork on a very large scale when Obama ran for president. And then again when he won. The Tea Party, quite honestly, looking at it, is nothing more than racism draped in an American flag. That's all the Tea Party is. That's all the Tea Party was. And that's all the MAGA movement is. It is racism draped in an American flag. MAGA adds on the addition of Christian nationalism, which makes it so much worse. When Trump entered the arena, that's when MAGA happened. And what was different about him was that he didn't care if he was overtly racist, or xenophobic, or homophobic, or even spouted fascist ideology. His first term showed us what he was and how bad he was when there were checks and balances on him. We all understood that if he had been given free rein, it would have been a lot worse. And then Biden got elected, and we assumed that Trump was one and done. And it looked like normalcy might return to the country. And then January 6th, 2021 happened. We had an insurrection at the Capitol, an insurrection attempt at the US Capitol. I watched this live on CNN as people stormed the Capitol, invaded congressional offices, spread feces on the wall, attacked, injured our Capitol police officers. And these are people who claim, oh no, we love the police, we back the blue. Bullshit. You don't back crap. You've never backed crap. You're just virtue signaling like all hell. That's all you've ever done. Because the supporters of Trump bought into his big lie that the election had been rigged, that the election had been stolen from him somehow. and they stormed the Capitol to prevent certification of the election. Even Trump's vice president, Mike Pence, knew this was wrong. When I saw this, I knew that recovery for this country would only work if we could ensure that someone like Trump could never win again. During the Biden administration, we saw Trump keep vocalizing his offensive views and keep vocalizing the big lie and keep encouraging his supporters to get more violent, to get more racist, more homophobic, more xenophobic, all of that. The election began and Kamala Harris stepped up when Biden stepped down. And I and many others felt the same kind of enthusiasm we'd felt when Obama ran. And then the unthinkable happened, and she lost, despite the groundswell of support that she had gotten. Now, there are serious questions as to whether or not all of those results were legitimate. We have Rockland County in New York, where down-ticket Democrats got votes and Harris got none, and that is statistically impossible, by the way. So we have claims from Musk that fraud happened. We have claims from Trump that Musk did fraud on his behalf. So I don't know what to tell you because I haven't seen the data, and I will not verify whether that's an accurate thing or not. But I'm also not going to not share that because it's important. When Kamala lost, I made a list. This was a list of what I call triggering events, lines in the sand for me. And when a certain number of these lines had been passed, I would explore the option of moving home to Sweden. At the time that I made this list, which was shortly after the election, little did I know that once Trump had taken office, every single item on this list would be checked off by day 30. Day 30. These were signs of fascism. These were signs of corruption. These were signs of oligarchy. These were signs of attempted dictatorship or monarchy. And every single one of these items was ticked off by day 30. So now I had a choice. Do I leave the United States or do I stay and fight? I chose to stay and fight. It happened that I was driving home one day from running errands, and I saw a rally on the town common in the town that I live in. Since I live a block away, well, 2 blocks away essentially, I drove home, I parked my car, ran upstairs, switched out of a shirt like this into a more rally appropriate shirt with, a pithy political slogan on it. And then I walked down to the rally. I met 50-odd amazing people. And I signed up on the list that very day, and that was how I became involved in the Indivisible movement. Since then, I've been active with them. I've been seeing rally turnouts, and these have filled me with at least some hope. I am head of our safety and de-escalation team for our town's Indivisible movement. And we've worked hard to ensure that our rallies are safe, and we've built up a good relationship with our police department to ensure that our rallies are safe. We keep an eye on message boards, on websites to track ICE movements and groups that are against everything America stands for, that come to these rallies and try to stoke up trouble. Groups like the Proud Boys, groups like the 3 Percenters. These are people who will show up to these things armed and don't give a crap about you. They want to intimidate you and scare you. They want nothing more than your fear, which is what Donald Trump wants. But for every step forward, through the rallies and through everything, we've taken a step back at the same time. The budget bill that has passed is a terrifying piece of legislation. It is filled with nothing but garbage. It is filled with nothing but things that hurt the lower and middle class individuals in this country. It is filled with things that go so against the grain of this country, it's not even funny. Social Security is targeted, Medicare is targeted. All of these things that help people are being targeted. SNAP benefits are being targeted. The Supreme Court has done an absolute number on destroying its own authority. It's had multiple chances when things have been brought to it to be able to reassert the tri-equal power of the legislative branch. And no offense to, well, actually all offense intended to Chief Justice Roberts, you have failed. You have failed in this. Your Supreme Court will go down as worse than the Supreme Court that handed down the Dred Scott decision, which is a court that is universally viewed as the worst Supreme Court ever. Yours is being viewed currently as worse than that. That is the legacy that you leave behind, and it is going to take us generations to fix that, unless a new Congress at some point can either impeach all of you people and get you out of the court, or impose term limits on you, which I'm theoretically opposed to. The entire purpose of not having them is that you, on the Supreme Court, are supposed to be above politics. But Alito, Thomas, you, Kavanaugh, you've all demonstrated, Amy Barrett Cohen, you've all demonstrated that you're not. Politics mean more to you than this country, which means you're not qualified to sit on that court. And then we've seen Congress surrender its own power to the presidency. Because again, the members of the GOP, who are basically all MAGA, have no spines and don't believe in this country and don't believe in their constituency. They believe in their donors, but they don't believe in you or me or any of the American people. And then we've had his executive orders, which, by the way, are not laws. They have some force of action over government agencies that report into the executive branch, but they are not laws. But people have been treating them as laws, which has made them even worse. We have had the most anti-scientific garbage passed in executive orders. We have had racist crap passed in executive orders. We've had garbage passed that gives ICE more authority than it absolutely should have. We have turned this country into garbage because it's targeting minorities by ICE, and politicians are targeting minorities. And this has been horrible to see, especially because it's all racism, xenophobia, and homophobia. That's all this is. You've wrapped it in an American flag, you claim that it's Christian, but it's not. What we are currently as a country is not what I and a large percentage of Americans, if not even a majority, believe in. I do believe that we can fight for it, and I do believe that we can get it back. But first, we need to make this country honestly great again. And we need to do that by getting rid of the racism, getting rid of the homophobia, getting rid of the xenophobia, and getting rid of the fascism that is creeping into our country. We made a mistake after the Civil War. we should absolutely have punished the South for their secession, for all of their claims, oh, it was just states' rights. When you read their Constitution and secession documents, the question that arises is, states' rights to do what? The answer to that question is slavery. Keep and maintain slaves. Subjugate a population because of the color of their skin. We as a country should be better than that. The fact that we are still not is disturbing. Excuse me. But we can be better than that. We have the potential to be better than that. We have the potential to be an amazing country. But to do that, we need to step up. We need to step up and say, we're done with this crap. It is time that we take a stand. We need to vote out every goddamn member of the GOP in Congress. We need to vote out every goddamn member of the GOP in the Senate. I realize you may think that the Democrats aren't much better, and quite honestly, from a European perspective, they're still right of center. They are not liberals from a European perspective. But they're a whole crap ton better than the goddamn GOP. Being a member of the GOP in this country right now and being a member of MAGA is as un-American as you can technically get. And it is time we ensure that their political power is removed. Some of us were born in this country. Some of us have chosen to be here. But all of us are Americans, and we should be Americans first. Your allegiance should not be to a political party or, more importantly, to a political demagogue. If you are putting president above party, you are everything. Actually, if you're putting president or party above country, you are everything that is wrong with America. We need to fix this. We need to fix this now. We need to fix this soon. There's a midterm election in 2026. I'm sure there are many small state elections in between. Even on a state and local level, we need to get every Republican out of office. They do not have your best interests at heart. They are opposed to every program that could benefit and help you. And they will do nothing to make this country what we once were. We were an amazing country. We had flaws. Absolutely, we had flaws. We were an amazing country, moving after World War II and up through the 80s and 90s. But what we have become is not only disturbing, it should alarm everybody in this country. If you don't see the fascist tendencies going on in this administration, you didn't study history. If you don't understand the power grab going on by the executive branch, you didn't study social studies. If you don't understand how our courts have been weakened, you didn't take the lessons that were taught to you in middle school and high school. We need to fix this country. We need to all be proud of being Americans. We need to be proud of who we are. Being proud of who we are is not the same as being nationalistic. That's what leads us down this path that we're on right now. You can be American and still admit we do things wrong. We have the highest rate of incarcerated people in the world. It's almost 700 people per 100,000. Compare that to most European countries, which are almost all of them below 100. There are a few exceptions to that, but almost all of them are below 100. We have more people incarcerated per 100,000 citizens than Russia and China. And those countries are not known for their being nice. We don't know what North Korea has. Those figures aren't readily available. We have more people incarcerated than some African nations that are dictatorships. The number one cause of death for children in this country is gun violence. More so than disease. No American should sit back and say that we are perfect, because we are not. But we can work to fix these problems. We can work to fix what is wrong with this country. We can work to make this country better. We can bring our country back to when we were better, when we stood up for other countries. We can bring this country back to when people were proud to be Americans, when we had good relationships with other countries, when we weren't threatening stupid crap like invading Greenland or invading Canada. When we weren't making up lies about the amount of fentanyl that crosses the border from Canada. By the way, the number's damn small. You know who the biggest importers of fentanyl into this country are? Americans, usually importing it from Mexico. I'm not blaming the fentanyl on Mexico. I'm blaming it on the Americans who bring it in from Mexico. That's what Customs and Border Patrol should be worried about, not our immigrant population, whom we're not even letting go through the process legally. We're showing up with ICE at the courthouses and arresting them as they're trying to go through this process legally. What does that tell the rest of the world? Some countries have issued travel advisories saying, don't come here. I don't blame them. I don't. We need to ask ourselves what it means to be American. We need to ask ourselves what we want it to mean to be American. We need to ask ourselves, if we travel abroad, how will we be treated because we are American? We all need to think about these things. We need to think about them carefully, and we need to think about them because it affects who we are. And it is absolutely time for us to make decisions on where we're going from here. If you can get involved in politics, do so. Absolutely. I'm planning on doing so within the next 2 years. If you have the ability to stand up and do that, do it. Remember, we have a midterm coming up in 2026. Vote. 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 Be an American. Vote not for party, not for policy. Well, technically for policy, but vote as if you were a minority. I hear people sitting back and saying, oh, white people are a majority. We're over 50% in this country. You know what? Yeah, that's true. We are at the moment. Do you know what the projection is, though? The projection is we are going to be a minority in this country soon. We will still be the largest chunk in this country, but everyone else is going to have totality a larger percentage. Vote as if you're a minority. If you're a man, vote as if you're a woman. If you're white, vote as if you're black, Hispanic, Latino. If you're straight, vote as if you're gay, lesbian, transgender. Don't care which you pick. Ask yourself today, if what's going on in this country were happening to me, would I accept it? If the answer to that is no, then why in God's name would you accept it for anybody else? Vote as if your life depended on it, because quite honestly, if we continue this road of down with racism, xenophobia, homophobia, and fascism, your life might depend on it one day, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of your gender, regardless of your sexual orientation. Vote as if your life depended on it. Thank you for listening.